Okay, so I will start with the same overview. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Board of Education of the Dearborn Public Schools, I would like to welcome Dr. Gail Shenkman to interview for the position of Superintendent. Dr. Shenkman currently holds the position of Associate Superintendent here in Dearborn. To take a moment to explain the format for this evening, we're going to introduce the board members, which I think we could probably skip that point since you know us probably more than you want to. Interview may take up to 90 minutes, questions submitted by audience if the time allows. There will be approximately 25 to 30 questions from the board. Towards the end of the interview, we'll give the candidate an opportunity to ask questions of the board, and we will provide an opportunity for the candidate to make a closing statement. Dr. Wilmot, our search consultant, will keep us aware of the time remaining. The audience feedback and or questions from the audience may be submitted on the green forms that are located on the table to my right. The board will consider these questions or comments, and if the forms have been signed, the questions are not duplicate or illegal, and if time permits. The task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the board as representatives of the community. However, we appreciate and seek input from our staff and our community. While we are not seeking recommendations as to which individual should be hired, we are asking your input as to the strengths and or concerns about each of the candidates. Please keep in mind the issues we may use as a basis for hiring. Please keep in mind the issues we may not use as a basis for our hiring decision. They are printed at the bottom of the form. Dr. Wilmot will collect these forms as we begin the last section of questions from the board, which is staff and personnel. So we'll start with an opening question. While we've had the opportunity to review your resume, our audience has not. Would you briefly review your background and tell us what causes you to be interested in the position at this point in your career?
Certainly. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to interview for the position of superintendent in Dearborn. I've been in Dearborn for 27 years. This is my 27th year in the district. I've taught at the high school, at Etzelford High School, at the middle school, at Bryant Middle School. I have experiences as an administrator at K-8 and then again at 7-8 and 6-8 and 9-12. I'm currently in my 7th year as Associate Superintendent. My educational background is an undergraduate degree in financial management, and I have a doctorate in educational leadership. As a middle school principal at Woodworth Middle School, my team and I effectively implemented block scheduling and co-teaching and inclusion of students with disabilities along with English learners and improved teaching and learning. I took the school, and my team and I took the school from the achievement group status, which was a former state label for improvement status, to the point that when I left it was scoring the second highest in the district in achievement. When I was the principal of Dearborn High School, I was very fortunate to have a former superintendent, Dr. Hughes, allow me to chair committees at the state and work on high school reform. I led my team at Dearborn High School to create the 9th grade academy and implemented the Early Start program for our incoming at-risk students and Link Crew transition program for all new freshmen, leading to more students finishing 9th grade and moving on after 1 year. We went from 36% of our students who were failing 1 or more class and 17% failing 3 or more classes, and reduced that to approximately 17% failing 1 or more, and somewhere around 8 to 9% failing 3 or more classes. So that was very successful at getting more students to graduate on time. This year, as Associate Superintendent, with the support of this board, I've led our team in collaboration with the community college to develop the Collegiate Academy. I've been involved in the implementation of our community anti-bullying initiative. I've played a substantial role in improving graduation rates through the successful transformation of our alternative high school, the Magnet High School, which now has a 5-year graduation rate of around 86%. If you'll recall, our virtual high school had a graduation rate of around 27%. I've been involved in the redesign and expansion of our extended day credit recovery program, and through the creation of the high school graduation interventionist positions, we've also reduced improved our graduation rate. I'm passionate about my work to improve education in Dearborn, and that has been my goal for 27 years that I've served this community. I believe my proven skills, leadership style, and experience are a good fit to move Dearborn forward. About a year ago, I decided that I was ready for a superintendency, and I made some applications prior to our surprise superintendent departure to California, where my family lives, and I did interview for positions there. But I think it's incredibly important for you to know that when Mr. Whiston actually asked me, are you interested in being the superintendent of Dearborn? I said, that's my dream job. And it is. I've served this district for a very long time, and I would love to continue to do that.
Given what you know about the school district, could you tell us what you believe are the most immediate challenges that we face?
Certainly, our friends at the state give us a challenge with money. So money and lots of testing. But I think that an outstanding school district needs to be a place where all students can be successful and where we meet the needs of all students. So that means our students that are at risk and that our challenges as far as moving them forward in their education, our English learners certainly. Long-term English learners is a passion of mine to try to make a difference with those students. We also need to help the average student in our district, as well as our students who are gifted, talented, whatever you want to call them, are high achievers. An outstanding district has the need to do all of those things. So meeting the needs of students has to be our number one goal, and that's something that's a challenge, meeting the needs, doing that while we're financially good stewards of the public's funds is incredibly important. Moving forward in this century, education with technology is another challenge that we have. We have a lot of challenges in education in 2015.
Yes. What specific capabilities and/or qualities would you bring to this position that would set you apart from other candidates?
Well, certainly the obvious that I guess I'm a very traditional candidate, right? I'm of the district and have been in the district for 27 years, certainly. I've worked at all levels, and that's important, and I've worked all over the city. So those are things that I certainly would bring. But also my leadership style is important. People who have worked with me would agree that I'm a collaborative leader. You don't move forward and be successful with much without being collaborative in your leadership style. I'm entrepreneurial. Some of the programs and initiatives that I've led have certainly been out of the box a little bit, and I think that's important. I also am a courageous leader. I faced many challenges in my work in the district, and I've always kept the needs of students first.
Just so you know, we're going to rotate around the table asking questions so you don't have to hear me all night long.
Ask some questions about community relations. How specifically have you engaged diverse populations in your current or previous positions, and how would you go about engaging all segments of our community if you were selected as our next superintendent?
Okay. Well, the very first thing that I did when I became principal of Dearborn High was move someone into the position of community liaison, student community liaison. Dearborn High was the one school that didn't have one. And because the population at Dearborn High had become more diverse, it was incredibly important for parents to have someone and students to have someone to reach out to. That was an important piece of what we did. I think it's important for the superintendent to be out in the community and involved in lots of different places and available for parents and staff, as well as the community leadership, and reach out to organizations to meet with them. We need to do that on the terms that those folks have. So for parents, it's evenings and it's daytime as well. And allowing people to have voice from all over our community. I've been involved with, in my current position, very much the Salina Community Group and meet with them on a regular basis, meeting on Monday, and have been involved in Optimus in my current position. At Dearborn High as principal, which I spent 4 years at Dearborn High, I was involved with all 5 parent groups and attended all of those meetings. So I think it's important to be out and about everywhere and meeting with everybody, and everybody needs to not have just have your presence, but have voice. We need to reach out and find out how we can support the needs of our community, and I have every intention of doing that.
Could you share with us ways in which you have accomplished successful communications with the community regarding our district's problems or accomplishments?
Well, I guess I'm going to tell you a story for this one, all right? When I became the principal of Dearborn High, my first year there was quite challenging. We had some folks arrested for doing some very bad things. And when you reach out to parents and you have to tell them very bad news, you need to do it in a number of different ways. So I held meetings. I have an open door policy. It was hard to do that when we had to tell them again something. So that was something that I think built trust. And we need to communicate in a lot of different ways. As a superintendent in 2015, that would mean that I would need to have a blog. I would need to use Twitter. I'd need to use Facebook. But we also need to do those face-to-face meetings with folks. I'm an honest person. I'm a person who is pretty transparent, sometimes too transparent, I think. But I think that sharing that with folks and being out and about in the community is very important. I guess I was going to close with this, but I'll put it in here now. I've seen two superintendents serve, one who I respect tremendously but did not live in the city, and one who did live in the city. It would be my intention to move to Dearborn if I'm appointed to this position. I cannot see a superintendent in Dearborn not living in the city. People have to be able to have access to you when you're at Kroger on the weekends, when you're Westbourne, when you're wherever, and that's a commitment that I make to you.
What are some examples of community activities in which you have been an active participant and/or provided leadership, and in what ways did that benefit the district?
Well, I'm certainly involved in Optimus in my current position, and I think it benefits the community in the way that we communicate and find out what's going around in the community, and gives that opportunity for people to chat with you. I'm not involved in a lot of other organizations in my current position, but I am involved in that one. And again, the Salina community meeting and the opportunity for folks to chat with me there, and for me to know to reach out to people and get the feel and the lay of the land from the people that are out there. I think that has been a very supportive group for Etzel Ford. They've taken on mentoring responsibilities for the students there, and really done some really great things for the kids at Etzel Ford High School.
The next questions are in the category of political awareness.
Okay.
What do you feel the superintendent's role is in influencing county and state political processing impacting K through 12 education? And how have you been involved in these processes?
Well, I think that the superintendent is a spokesperson along with the board for the school district. I think it's important that the superintendent is the communicator frequently, and is called on to be the communicator to communicate the message. We want to support Dearborn and funding for Dearborn and doing the right things for all of our students and the district. So it's important to establish relationships with the city, with political office holders, and have them be the people that give you a call when they want to know about a bill that's being proposed, or what's our take on how that will affect Dearborn. So those relationships are very, very important politically. And I think I lost the other part of the question. I'm so sorry.
How have you been involved in these
Gotcha.
processes?
Well, I'm not the superintendent, but I certainly am the associate superintendent. So I have had many opportunities to communicate with School Life and the newspaper and folks like that. I do attend fundraisers and try to be out there as a face for the district, a positive voice for the district, and that's a piece that I've been involved in. I also attend Wayne County RESA things and things at Metro Bureau, so that I can become knowledgeable about the influence that legislative events can have. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Hughes allowed me to be a representative chairing a committee at the state level. He also invited me to be a participant at a high school reform conference, the National High School Reform Conference, and I was one of 4 representatives from our state. I'm involved in organizations that are educational organizations that also support education at the national and the state level. So I belong to the administrators organization, which is the superintendent's organization. I belong to the high school principals organization, and those kinds of pieces of how we support and have a presence in Dearborn are very important for a superintendent.
What is your view of the testing assessment programs being required of all school districts by the Michigan Department of Education? Do you believe these programs help to improve academic achievement, or do they slow the instructional process? What changes, if any, do you feel need to be made?
Well, I think our current superintendent is having a lot of when you get to Lansing comments made about the testing situation, particularly this year. This year's testing was a misstep, and when people were calling it that, that was probably right on. I can't imagine that anybody would think it makes sense to test a student for an entire day on a language arts test. Also, when you don't get the data back until the fall, I'm not sure that you can use that for much. In our district, we've implemented NWEA this year, which allows us to actually look at growth. So we measure students' level at the fall and at the winter and the spring, and we can see, is it making a difference? And it comes to us in real time, so we get results quickly. I know that Mr. Whiston has suggested something on that order for the state, and that would be fabulous if you could put that into play. We have to, of course, meet the regulations of the feds because they hold the purse strings. So it's important for us to follow their rules and regulations for testing. But we need to be politically advocating for changes in testing so that it makes a whole lot more sense for our students. We're not afraid of accountability, and we're not afraid of measurement. We've added student reading level and math level to report cards for our students, and that's so that our parents are communicated with well. So we're not afraid of test data, and we don't want to hide behind it, but we want it to make a difference for our kids, and it needs to be usable and in real time.
Thanks. The next question is two parts. What impact do you feel the Michigan Department of Education designation of focus and priority schools is having on Michigan school districts in general? And two, how are current regulations regarding dual enrollment programs impacting students and districts?
Okay. Well, let me start with the first one, and then I'll
Sure.
move back to dual enrollment. We tend to ask multi-part questions in Dearborn, too. I know I do it, too. So I think that the focus and priority school, I guess the concept of no child left behind is not bad. Focusing on all children and not allowing subgroup children to be left behind, I'm okay with that. I think that was like the only good thing that happened with that, perhaps. But it did that for us. It meant that we looked at our kids who are English learners. We looked at our kids that had IEPs. We looked at various subgroups of kids, and we needed to support their learning, granted. But what happens when you take the pieces of the puzzle and you use them in a bad way, and you use them punitively for schools? It demoralizes the schools. We take it as just a negative, not a support thing. So identifying schools with these identifications and these labels hasn't proved to be beneficial in that way. I will say that Etzel-Ford High School rose to the occasion, and but I think Etzel-Ford was on the way there anyway, and having us send a whole lot of money in one direction because and having control of that money and how we spend it is another aside to this too. So I think there's been a negative impact, but I also think there has been a positive impact in the way that we've looked at subgroups. The moratorium on focus and priority schools is probably a good thing with a new test, and I'm pleased to see that that's probably where we're at right now. Dual enrollment. We are the leaders in dual enrollment, as you know, in our district. So we have a lot of students who leave us with a lot of credit when they leave high school, and it makes Dearborn special. And our students are very successful in their dual enrollment classes, as I fiddle with my papers. So the percentage of our graduates who took one or more college class while they were in our Dearborn Public Schools. 2014 graduates. In our district as a whole, 55% of our students took a college class, and I think that's outstanding. Students who take college classes are more likely to move on and enroll in post-secondary enrollment and be successful there. We have about 2,000 students who are in dual enrollment each semester. 2,000 classes taken in dual enrollment each semester, and I think that's outstanding. And our students do well. So in the fall of 2014-2015, 76% of our 1,914 classes, those students earned A's or B's, and 87.9% earned A's, B's, and C's. That's better than the general population at the college. So our kids do very well. We're very fortunate to have our early colleges and to offer something wonderful to our community. College education paid for, 2 years of college paid for our students, and hopefully motivate those students to be successful on those same achievement tests, some of them, so that they can enroll in the Collegiate Academy. But those are, in 2015, melding high school and college is the way we do things, and that makes a whole lot of sense.
Are you ready for the next round?
I am.
Okay, I'm going to do leadership attributes. Please describe the strategic planning process you are most comfortable with using and share any evidence you have that the process has been successful.
Well, I've been involved in the strategic planning process in our district with our superintendents. I've been involved with the last 3 superintendents processes. I think that the process that Mr. Whiston used, which was somewhat of an abridgment of that process that we used previous to that, was useful at that time. I think that with a new superintendent being hired in our district, that it would behoove us to, in the process of the retreat that I would hope would happen within the very short time that we have this summer, to make some decisions about moving forward with the strategic planning process. That would be a decision that the board, that you would make, that we'd want to decide whether we were moving forward with that. I think it's important in a general sense to identify what our goals are, and what our focus areas and things we're going to work on are, and that's the role of our school board to do that. You certainly want input from our community and all of our stakeholders in that, and that's really what the strategic planning process is about, is getting that input. And there are a number of different ways to go about doing that. Certainly the role of the school board is policy, and we need to look at the different ways of getting there in that retreat process.
What are some examples of how you have used data and research to make important decisions in your current position?
Well, all that data I just shared with you is something that we definitely look at, whether we see that our dual enrollment programs are being successful, and whether the changes we've made to graduation that have impacted graduation rates have been successful. So we look at every 6 weeks. When I was responsible for the high school principals and the middle school principals, we looked at data on grades, and I've shared that with you at the 6-week marking periods. How many students are earning what grades, and who's being successful? Are we making a difference on the cohort report? Are we keeping kids on track for on-time graduation? Back to the grades, that means we have a conversation about what we're doing about the students that aren't being successful. How are we going to make changes to make a difference in with those students? So those are conversations that we have with principals, and with principals and with their teachers, and teachers with their students for grades, and their decisions we make about whether it makes sense to do something or not. An example from when I was principal of Dearborn High, of where I made an aha that was an aha, was an after-school program, an after-school learning program. Makes sense. Kids are going to do better if you have them stay after school and get tutoring, right? Didn't make a difference. So we had to change up how we were doing it, because we saw that the same number of students were not being successful. So we turned that around and changed how we were doing business. I think we have to use data to guide what we do, and we should be evaluating everything we do with data.
Given that both the Dearborn Public Schools and Henry Ford College share a common Board of Education, what unique challenges and/or opportunities do you believe are created by this relationship? How do you see the two institutions collaborating on behalf of the students and the community?
Well, I think it gives us a unique advantage of everybody else, right? Because we're K-14. I think we utilize that for our early college and our dual enrollment. It's why, frankly, we have that many kids in dual enrollment and others don't. But I think there are other opportunities. We partnered and have Project Lead the Way at Etzel Ford and have offered that in partnership with the college. It's the first dual enrollment that we've had on our campus that we've offered students. I think we have to, and of course the early college, the Henry Ford Early College and the Collegiate Academy and our new manufacturing early college are all partnerships with Henry Ford College. But I think we've got to go further. And I think the next step with that is to help make a difference in our education and our teachers, to have them have opportunities to talk with and learn from in coordination with the college professors in their content area. So the math teachers at the college, what are you seeing? What are the things that students need to be successful in Math 116? What are the things students need to be successful in 131 and 132, English 131 and 132? And we need to, our next step is to move forward and make that happen. I do think we need to explore more partnerships with the college. It's a wonderful position that we're in the partnership, and we need to really delve into that and find ways for more opportunities for us to move forward with more partnerships with them. And because you're the board of both organizations, that just makes that possible.
What are the key practices needed to establish and maintain a good working relationship with the board, parents, and members of the local business community?
Well, certainly with the board for a superintendent, it's communicate, communicate, communicate. I think that Mr. Whiston has been a wonderful teacher at doing just that. So, and sometimes you get my emails too. When something happens, you shouldn't ever be in a situation where you're, my Kroger example, but I should pick on another store, where you're there and somebody walks up to you and says, "Did you know?" That puts you in a very bad situation. So, you know, the communication piece of this is super important in working with the board. I'm very big on communication with everybody. I think that we need to be transparent in everything we do, because Dearborn is a small town, right? It doesn't feel like it to those from outside sometimes, but we know it is. So if we don't get out our message and we don't get the accurate message out, something that isn't necessarily the accurate message gets out there. We need to learn from our community, and we need to reach out to them to find how we can better meet their needs. And all of that's about communication.
What is the most important ethic for a public school superintendent? How would you apply your most important ethic if you found yourself in a situation between doing what is best for an individual, yet making sure that the value of public accountability and conforming to community standards?
I think it's incredibly important that a superintendent and any public official is ethical and is honest. We have to do what's right for kids, and we have to protect the district. Those are essential elements. One situation that I can give you as an example of happens to administrators all over the district, and it just happens, and that's, we can't tell one parent about another person's child, right? Where it would have been easier to explain something just to tell them. But we can't do that. We have to protect everybody, every student here. And we have to have a district that is fair and just for all. So one thing I always told my teachers as a principal was to treat every kid in their charge as if their parent were the most knowledgeable person in the entire community. And I think that living by that is important. Granting favors for folks is great when it's a favor that you would give everybody and everybody's child.
Thank you. On curriculum and instruction, the question is, please give us examples of educational change or reform that you have initiated that improves success for all students?
Absolutely. Well, I think that when I say that I was the leader of, nothing happens without your support and without a team behind it. So the things that I've been involved in as associate superintendent that I'm so proud of include the 8-step plan to improve graduation rates. I think that's made a difference for everybody's children. I think when we raise our graduation rates, even our highest achievers benefit from that. And I think that's important for our parents to know, because when we have higher grad rates and when our district is looked on as being a very successful district, it increases everybody's chances of getting into those really competitive schools. So just had to add that. The Dearborn Magnet High School, I am super proud of that accomplishment. I know that you had a presentation recently. We had a student last year who we were able to connect with the college and get a full ride scholarship for a homeless student. That was just fabulous. The Henry Ford Collegiate Academy, working in partnership with the folks at the college, we were able to put that in place. And that's a huge accomplishment. I know that in Mr. Whiston's interview for superintendent, because I was there, he said that he wanted to bring a free college education to the students in Dearborn, and we found a way to make it happen. So that was awesome. And I think the Response to Bullying Behavior Initiative has been another excellent thing for our kids. We chart the data, we track the data by having those surveys every year, and students report, as I believe I've shared with you, that they feel safer in our schools, and we have seen a decrease in incidents of bullying behavior in our schools. We do track incidents of bullying behavior. We can always improve on everything that we're doing in that regard, but I think we have a good structure for making a difference for our kids. I think if you went all around the metropolitan Detroit area and you asked kids in Dearborn what an upstander is, and you asked kids in other communities what an upstander is, I would bet more kids in Dearborn will know what an upstander is. It's our curriculum, we teach it. So those are some of the things that I'm very proud of and have made a difference for all kids in Dearborn.
Thank you. Please describe your experience with providing quality educational programs for students at all achievement levels. What role should small learning communities play, if any? So the question again is, please describe your experience with providing quality educational programs for students at all achievement levels. What role should small learning communities play, if any?
Okay. Well, going back to the days when I was the principal at Woodworth, our team implemented co-teaching. That was a long time ago. And we did it for English learners and for our kids that had IEPs. And it raised expectations for students. We've been very successful as a district at lowering the number of students who need IEPs, because we do have interventions within our classrooms, and we teach in small groups, and that makes a difference in making that happen. But I think it's incredibly important that we meet the needs of all students. So I have been involved in a couple of implementations this year. The STEM school for 6th and 7th graders. This is we just accepted our second class, so that's for students. It's competitive in admission at the middle school level. And at the same time, we implemented ACE, which is the Dearborn Academic Center of Excellence, for our students who would have potentially been retained in the 8th grade. And I know that that's also been a presentation that you've seen that has made a big difference in the lives of kids that were really struggling. So I've been involved in those couple of things. And then next year, I went with a team out to California, and we looked at a program called Avid, and I think I shared that with you as well. Avid is a program that is advancement via individualized determination, but most people know it as Avid. It prepares middle and high school students for success in high school, college, and beyond, and especially students who come from traditionally families that are underrepresented in higher education. And that includes students who are long-term English learners. So students who've been in our schools who still are scoring not proficient as English learners, having been around our schools and in our schools for 6 years, some of whom have been born here. And that has been honestly, something that I've really been excited about bringing to Dearborn, and we're able to do it now.
Okay, so did you cover the small
Small
learning communities?
yeah.
Or-
I'll get there too.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm so sorry.
No,
I guess
okay.
we could talk about those little pieces like DCMST and STEM, and I think all of those smaller learning communities have pieces. I think when you talk about a small learning community, you can talk about it within a classroom and small group instruction, as well as our smaller programs like our magnet school. And I think all of those things fill needs for our students and make us a diverse learning community and stronger.
Thank you. What is your view on the role and importance of student personal portfolios and the role that individual education plans should play as part of the overall system of curriculum, instruction, and assessment?
Well, I love my learning plan, and I think we're just in the infancy stages of it. So what we're asking our students to do is to identify a personal learning goal or a passion, along with their academic goal as well. So if a student is interested in rocketry, that could be something that will motivate them to be involved and more interested in math and move them forward in that. People work harder when they're passionate about things. So I think that having a learning plan and also being able to track the data, so our NWEA tests allows us to do that, certainly. And we have students who say they're at this level, and we've seen across the district charts of students charting their own data, and that really is a big motivator too. So I think each student having an individualized plan that they own is very important, and we are moving forward in Dearborn with that.
How would you go about evaluating the effectiveness of the curriculum, teaching methods, and assessments used in our district?
Well, that's a whole lot of stuff. So teaching methods, we've been implementing the Danielson model for teaching, and it's helped us identify as a group. Our administrators have all been trained, have been able to identify outstanding teaching, and have been utilizing that, and that's been great. We need to use data to look at how our students are doing, frankly. We need to know that a student is getting a year's worth of growth in a year's worth of time, and our students who are behind need to do more than that. So we do use that as an evaluation of whatever method, whatever modality of instruction we're using, whatever method we're using for instruction, and we need to evaluate all of our programs. It's great to have anecdotal evidence that it looks like something's working, but until you check it out, then you don't know that. As far as our assessments being successful, I think if they're moving students along like NWA seems to be doing, I think that that's a good thing. We need to give it a little bit of time for everybody to embrace it and parents to understand it. We have to help educate our parents. I think that having a grade level report on the report cards was a good communication tool, and we need to stick with that. So everything needs to be evaluated, and we need to assess whether it's making a difference in student achievement. And we measure student achievement with those tests, along with our state tests, because they are what they are. There are also some other things we need to measure. We measure students' grades. That's another measurement, are kids being successful. We look at kids getting into college, our kids enrolling in college, our kids completing college. Those are all pieces of the puzzle. It's not just that one test score.
My turn?
It's your
The
turn.
next couple of questions are in the area of finances and operations. Please describe your experience with budget development and financial management.
Well, my undergrad degree is in financial management, so that's been very helpful. I, as a principal, had at Woodworth a Title I budget and a general fund budget, and was very cognizant of being careful with that and not overspending. It's good to stay for a rainy day, too, because sometimes you'll want to do some professional development or whatever as a principal. At Dearborn High, I also was in charge of handling a budget there, and also was a good steward of the public's funds. I have one here in my current position, and have to make sure that we make good decisions. And I think that the measure of that is, what does it mean for kids? How does it help us make a difference in kids and education.
In tough financial times, how do you set priorities when there are competing interests, such as the need to implement programs for struggling students and also keep programs for gifted students?
It's very, very hard to do. One of the things I did when I first became the associate superintendent is I identified an area that was near and dear to my heart. So I was a part of the group that implemented middle school in the district, and I was a good part of the group that identified the second prep as an opportunity to save about $1.5 million. It was a great thing for our teachers and our students to have that additional prep for teams to work together for kids. But it was a little rich for our blood at this point. It's hard. Those decisions are all very hard to make. And we have to make them in the best interest of students. But sometimes we, as a group, because we need to get together as a group, can find a way to make a win-win situation. It means that people do more, that take on more responsibilities. It might mean that we need to look for funding in another way. We've really used our Title II money effectively for professional development now. It's really our only source of professional development for our staff these days. When I came to this position as associate superintendent, when Mr. Whiston took over, I had a nice pot of $200,000 to spend, and that didn't last very long. So we've got to be much more careful about what we use our money for, and those funds, the money that is coming to us from the feds, compensatory education money, is restricted. So sometimes we can't use it for things that we'd like to use it for, and that's hard. So sometimes it's the at-risk students that we can use it for. It isn't the gifted and talented students that we can use it for. And that ties our hands somewhat. And it's hard for people to understand that you can't use money that's out there to, reduce class size for everybody. But there are restrictions that come with that. And we hope that as our new state superintendent takes his role, we'll receive some more funding that we can use in ways that we as a community and you as a board responsible to the community can make decisions that are local decisions.
And last question for me, describe the extent of your experience in managing facilities and district operations.
Well, that kind of goes back to the Woodworth and Dearborn High piece of the puzzle. Dearborn High, not quite like Fordson, but in some ways like Fordson, is sort of like a little city. There are 200 people that work there and 1,800 students that go to school there. So managing that plant and making sure that things were running well is management. It's not just instructional leadership. There's management being a building principal as well. And our facilities have to be in good shape. We have some beautiful old buildings, but it takes a lot of effort to keep them up, and our staff does a wonderful job of doing that. So I've had those kind of experiences. I was a part of the group that took a look at the Heights campus last year and said, that's a great opportunity to create a condo complex with lots of different programs in it. So I've been involved in that as well.
The next group of questions is on staff and personnel. How would you hold individual school sites and central office staff accountable for results?
Well, we do. And I can tell you that Mr. Whiston has been a great leader in that regard too. He allows people to make decisions and choices, and I would have the same leadership style, but holds them accountable and holds himself accountable. And I think that's exactly what we need to do. So we support people. We know that sometimes mistakes are made, but we support people and then we hold them accountable for results. I think that our buildings and our staff need to have the ability to make choices because they're professionals. So teachers in their classrooms shouldn't be dictated that you've got to do X, Y, Z to get to somewhere. You have to teach the curriculum for sure, but you need to do that as a professional with the ability to do a lot of really cool, exciting things, artistic things, as long as you're getting the results. So we look for results. We look to make sure that our students are getting that growth. And when that's not happening, we have to help people make some more structured decisions about how they move forward. So as long as we're seeing movement in the correct direction, in the right direction, then there are more choices that can be had. And when we don't see that happen, we need to offer supports to help them get there.
Please share your experience in working with employee groups, unions, at all levels, and tell us how your working relationships have produced positive results for students.
I think that it's important to, I'll tell you the story about the Freshman Academy, because that's a Dearborn High working with teacher kind of story. So when I was at Dearborn High, the one thing that everybody agreed on was there was a problem with freshmen, right? They weren't being successful. There's a problem with freshmen. Lots of people didn't want to teach them. And I had done a lot of looking at Freshman Academy and in my opportunities that Dr. Hughes gave me in high school reform. Then had to do some things. So one of the things that goes along with the Freshman Academy is to have an area where first-time freshmen are by themselves without upperclassmen. It's part of what we do in Freshman Academy. There were certainly some resistors. People had been in rooms for 30 years. Along with my team of administrators at Dearborn High and teacher leaders, we had a moment. The moment was when a teacher with 30 years experience said, "I'll give up my room." And that momentum led to other people saying, well, if Suzanne's going to give up her room, this will be okay. So nurturing that program was important and was working with the team. I've worked with union presidents as a principal many times. I do now, just was at the Turn Conference, was a representative for the district. I've served on the negotiation team for the district in our numerous negotiations. And when I was an ADSA member, I was on the other side of the table negotiating for the administration. But I have those kind of experiences.
What is your philosophy regarding effective professional development for teachers and principals? What role should professional learning communities play, if any?
Well, let me talk about a couple pieces of that. I think professional learning communities are great. Teacher leadership in learning is phenomenal. People getting together and learning together gets us much further. I think the next step, and you'll see this in the folder that I've given you as for ideas for 2015-16, I think is where I have it, is we've been talking about having a set of skills that all teachers bring with them. So all of our teachers in Dearborn should know SIOP, Sheltered Instructional Observation Protocol for our English learners. Our teachers in secondary should know reading apprenticeship. There are lots of those kinds of things that we can identify. Not lots, a set amount of those things that we can identify. But we've got to support them and give them the professional development. So what I see us doing is identifying those things and then allowing teachers to make choices. So I need that skill, I've got to go to that to get that skill. Perhaps that means that I can do a webinar that gets me that skill. So teachers need to have the choices and need to be able to select from those things that make them an outstanding teacher in our district because they have those set of skills. So I think professional learning communities are a terrific thing, a great way to get us where we need to get with teachers working together on the same page and building that kind of momentum, which is teacher-led. And I think we've got to empower teachers to make some choices in their learning.
In your current position, how much time do you spend in schools, in the classroom, and in the community? And what value has this been to you?
Well, this year I spent more time in schools. In the past, I had another responsibility. So as Shannon Peterson has taken over the role of the secondary, I have had more chances to be out and about in more schools. I spent 6 weeks at ASTEM Adult Education while the principal was out on a medical, and that was phenomenal. I was on campus every day and came here afterwards. It's important because it gave me an opportunity to look at 2 new programs and see how they were going, and that was real important. I'm out at Etzel Ford now with the principal gone almost every day for some piece of the day, but they have a phenomenally effective leadership team there. It's a bigger place, so there's more people, so I haven't had to be there every day. I try to be out and about most days of the week across the district. I think that we need to focus as close to the students in the classroom and the schools as we can as central office staff. And it's important that we do that and be out and about in the community. I try to go to a lot of activities, and that means, you know, events in the schools, honors things, so I have an opportunity to be with folks, with parents, and hear from parents. I was involved in getting out the word about the Collegiate Academy and had multiple meetings across the district, multiple meetings across the district, and chatted with folks there, and that was very helpful as well. So every chance I get.
Okay, at this point, we're done bombarding you with our questions, but we would like to take a few minutes to allow you an opportunity to ask us questions if you have questions for us. So be gentle.
Well, as a board, what would be your priority for our district? Where do you see our biggest need as a district in Dearborn now? It's kind of a tough one. Sorry about that.
Who wants to tackle that one?
It doesn't have to be the very top one. It can be just a priority.
I'll answer what I think. I think that the most important thing that we need to continue to work on is our meeting the needs of each student. Our district has grown tremendously. When I first got on the board, I think we had 12,000 students, and we're up to almost 20,000 now. We're on the verge of being too large of a district, and I think that it's really important that we make sure that every child's needs are being met. And for some students, that may be just making sure that someone's there to say, hey, don't forget to do this, hey, don't forget to do that. And some students really need those challenging educational opportunities. And that's difficult to manage in a district our size. And I think that if anybody can do it, that we can. But it's something that we need to not become complacent about. You know, No Child Left Behind, like you said, was a good intention. Implementation, not so much. Repercussions, horrible. But the idea behind it was a good idea. Mm-hmm. And we need to look at that, and since we have to focus on that anyways, we need to use that information to make sure that each student is getting a year's worth of progress in a year's worth of time. We can't forget about the students who are advanced in elementary school and end up being average by the time they get to high school, because they're not making a year's worth of progress in a year's worth of time. They just haven't fallen behind, you know, and there's a difference. And so I think that it's important for us to continue to work really hard to make sure that every child is getting what they need, not every child getting the same thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Joe?
I think what's very important is that we continue to build on some of the successes that we've had over the last few years. We've got a lot of momentum going. We've created some phenomenal programs. Our association with the college, we're headed in the right direction, and I just want to make sure that we continue on that path. That's very important, especially given the lack of funding, you know, from the state. It makes it that much more difficult, but we've managed to do well with little, and in my opinion, I'd like to see that continue. That's very important to me, that we don't level off and just, you know, go with the status quo, that we continue to be innovative, continuing the programs that we've developed for both the gifted and the at-risk students, the English learners. I mean, we've done a tremendous job over the past few years. I'm very proud of everybody, the board, the staff, the students, the parents, the community. They've supported a bond issue when it wasn't popular to do that. And I just want to make sure it's very important that we continue in that direction under the superintendent's leadership.
This is why I love Dearborn.
As a new board member, I really would like to get into some strategic planning. Mm-hmm. It's about time for us to do that so that I can get an overview, understand better what's going on. The older board members, they already know what direction we're going, and obviously
sure?
Joe is very happy with it. But I just think it's time for retreats and strategic planning so that we can all agree of the direction that we're going.
Thank you.
Trustee Bazey?
I'd like to see, we have that bond and we have the increase of technology and the new technology in the classrooms, which I've been happy to see, but technology is changing so quickly and we can't continue to ask for bonds, and so I'd like to see what, with the new superintendent, a strategy to, with dwindling resources that we're getting, unfortunately, what's the strategy in maintaining that technology within the classrooms, within the classroom, so that the teachers can continue to teach the kids in the world that they're going to be working in a few years.
Trustee McDonald?
Well, I'm proud of Dearborn too, and I'm proud of not only the fact that we've been able to be innovative, but we've also maintained the arts and the extracurriculars and things that keep children passionate about coming to school. And I want to make sure that we're able to maintain those types of things, because a lot of districts are not.
Yeah.
And I think they're highly important. A lot of those things are the things that might get this child to school that day and engaged in school. And then while we've got their attention, then they learn, oh, math isn't so bad, or, oh, I can write too. And that brings out other creative measures.
Yeah, this board has been super supportive of that, aka last night.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Well, I can't disagree with what everybody else has already said, because those two are my focus is that when we continue with the programs that we're building, that are strong programs that we have determined are being successful, and we grow those and we remain innovative. I think we're one of the few school districts who have been willing to take those risks and think outside of the box and move forward with it, despite some naysayers who may have thought that we couldn't make it happen. And I'll be quite honest, when Brian was interviewed and he said he was going to get the free college, even I said, oh, geez, good luck, buddy. But he did it, and because everybody continued to support that vision. So that's important to me, is that we do, and for Dr. Mead to be able to see that vision that we have been familiar with, to make sure that we're still communicating that. So the other thing I'd like to add with all these things, because we have heard from parent groups who wanted to make sure that we had strong arts programs, and we've heard from the parents who have high achieving students and felt that they'd been kind of misplaced in the process of our focus on the challenged students for a while, that we make sure that we stay connected with our parent organizations and have a really strong plan to keep them informed and involved, so that we continue to grow the programs, but know that we're keeping the parents and the students interested in remaining in the buildings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions?
No, I think that was a pretty big one, wasn't it?
On the solution to world peace while we're at it?
Yeah.
We have several questions from the audience. The first question is from Yasmin Ferris. As a district, we're looking for a long-term vision. If chosen for this position, how long do you see yourself leading our district?
I will stay as long as you want me to stay. I have no intention of retiring. That was a bad rumor. I was looking for a superintendency, so I would have retired from Michigan and worked. My mom worked till she was 78. I can't promise you I'll work till I'm 78. That would be about 20 years from now. But I'm going to be around for quite a while, as long as you want me.
The next question is from Dr. Elder, and she says, you have been the brains behind great programs. What is the next progressive program you would implement to place Dearborn apart from other national schools?
Thank you, Dr. Elder. I really appreciate that compliment. That was lovely. I have some ideas for next year and beyond. Certainly our customer service initiative that we've started this year will identify some places that we need to improve. And I think that that's an important piece of our puzzle to keep our folks, everybody, sending their kids to public schools in Dearborn. I think we need a long-range technology plan, because I think we're moving into a blended learning kind of teaching environment. I speculate. I can't see the future either, but I think we need to use that technology money in a very good way and to support our learning. I see us developing a plan to support students and families through meaningful parent involvement at all levels. We need to crack that nut, and part of that's going to be home visits that we're focusing on next year, but we need to have a meaningful way for parents to be involved in their kids' education at every single level. Expanding the partnership of Henry Ford College, I talked about that. And I think a marketing plan to tell everybody all the things we've got going in Dearborn. I know I did that video about options, but I think we need a even better outreach to let everybody know that's what's going on, including our own employees. I think calling everything Henry Ford something or another has a positive piece to it, but it's a little bit confusing, and we need to get that out there. And Dr. Elder, I am so excited about Avid coming to our district. We're going to be piloting it and then moving on to Avid Excel. There aren't a lot of districts in Michigan that have Avid in place. West Bloomfield and Utica do, and we visited there as well as Pomona, and I want to crack the nut of long-term English learners. That's not a good moniker, and we don't want our students to have it. We need high expectations to move students on to college and beyond, and that's going to move us in that direction.
This next question is also from Dr. Nesbiya Elder. You have stated numerous times the transcript checks used by counselors are done manually for official reviews of graduating students, creating a culture of systemic problems and unfairness to students and staff, affecting morale over the years. Since Dearborn is perceived to be a progressive district, would you change anything about the transcript review process?
Well, we have. So let me talk about that. The first thing I was handed when I assumed the position as associate superintendent in this district, on my first day on the job, was a pile of transcripts. They were handed to me, and there was a rumor out there that kids were graduating and didn't have the graduation requirements, and I was told that that was my first challenge, was to fix it. It really turned out to be a clerical problem more than anything else, frankly. We weren't being very careful about putting graduated with diploma in places and that sort of thing. So we had kids with 3 credits that said graduated with diploma. They never graduated anything. It wasn't a clerical situation, so we fixed that. But more importantly, now that we have the graduation intervention specialist who audited all the transcripts this past week, before we had graduation, we had no gotcha. So those transcripts are clean. Our students have qualified for graduation, and they're walking and receiving their diplomas, having that already been carefully checked by our graduation intervention specialist. And thank you, Fadia Nahed, for having those little checkoffs. So most of it is already, automated. But they literally look through every one of those transcripts. When I took over and was given that responsibility, I used to spend the entire month of July checking transcripts, but it was after the fact, so it turned into something that looked like a gotcha. Well, we don't have a gotcha anymore. The gentlemen that are the graduation intervention specialists spent the last 4 days in the office going through the transcripts, and we're all good to go. There are no errors. No one's graduating that shouldn't have. And they didn't find anything other than an M wasn't there for make it up credit, so it didn't impact graduation at all in any of our transcripts. So we're in good shape.
The next question is from Rod Awan. Why do you feel drawn to this position of superintendent?
Wow, that's a good one, Rod. I guess I've moved in different positions in the district, and I don't think that if I had, this is going to be really bizarre, I don't think that if I had been surplused from Etzelford High School to Bryant, I would have been an administrator in the district. I don't know, maybe I would have been. It just happened that way, that I moved there and Carl Stoof tapped me to be acting assistant principal. I guess just kind of life leads you in that direction. I think I have a lot to offer. And I've always, as I said earlier, wanted to leave the world a better place. I think I've been able to, with Mr. Whiston's help, move the district forward in a lot of ways. If Mr. Whiston had stayed in the district, I don't know that I'd be here now. Might have been somewhere else. But I think I have a lot to offer, and I would love to be in Dearborn to complete my career, not in the near future, but in the future. and continue to move a wonderful district with a wonderful group of folks. We have fabulous teachers, fabulous administrators, an incredibly supportive Board of Education, parents who trust us with their kids. This is a place I want to be, and I think I have a lot to offer and can contribute that, and I will enjoy the rest of my career being here in Dearborn.
The next question is from Adib Muzib. What is your plan to narrow or close the student academic achievement gap between schools and within schools?
That's a really good question. I think that we analyze that gap and we move kids forward with lots of different things. So we've used the LA Plus classes at Etzel Ford to try to move kids forward. As I've mentioned, Avid ad nauseum too. I think that does that as well, lowering the number of kids who have IEPs by meeting their needs in the Tier 1 things we do in a classroom. I think all of our teachers being experts at teaching our English learners using the SIOP method, using reading apprenticeship, all of those things have served us well to narrow the gap. But, and I think this is what Mr. Whiston says, what you look at gets focused on, or what gets checked gets taken care of. So we're going to keep looking at the achievement gap. We're going to look at the gaps and we're going to confront them and are being cognizant of them and making changes to instructional practice with our great group of teachers is going to make a difference. We'll continue to move the district forward.
The next question is not signed, however, it is a good question, so I am going to ask it. The focus is always on the instructional staff. What plans do you have for non-instructional staff with regard to professional development?
I think that's a wonderful question. If you'll recall, when we initiated the Response to Bullying Behavior program, we empowered every person that works in Dearborn to support our kids. So we said, yes, you are going to be doing training every year on response to bullying behavior, and if you see something happening and you're a custodian, you're a tradesperson, you're a cafeteria worker, you're going to be empowered to do something about it. We're going to train you, and we're going to help you to do that, but we're going to expect that you do that. We are all here for learning and education of kids, and all of our staff members can be contributors to that. So ideas that are out there by our instructional people are huge. I did the training for some of that, and I heard from people who were custodians telling me things like, really? I'd love to do that. Nobody ever asked me. We need to ask them, because they're an untapped reservoir of support for the educational system in our district. These are our kids, and they can make a difference too. A lot of them make a tremendous difference. One child making a connection with one person. We had the awards for our non-instructional folks. That was really cool. But kids make connections with lots of different people. I know that a student at Dearborn High, when I was the principal there, had made a tremendous connection with one of our security guards, and that made a big difference. So having those folks part of our team, we need to use them. We need to better utilize them.
Next question is from Dr. Elder. Did you ever use your personal influence with school principals to affect evaluations directly or indirectly?
No.
This next question is from Adib Musa. What strategies would you implement to make schools or the district more flexible to change and new ideas?
Wow, make schools. I think being a risk taker myself, as some of the things that I've put forward, enables me to help others to do that. I think that we encourage folks in making those kinds of things happen. Again, the accountability piece. If you're making a difference and we see achievement going up, that's terrific. We support you in making changes. Our schools don't all have to look exactly the same.
Excellent. Well, we have some time remaining. So is there anything that you would like to cover with us that you haven't had the opportunity to yet? Or you can use this opportunity for closing remarks as well.
Sure. Well, each of you has a folder that I've shared with you, and I kind of like to go through that a little bit. So you have a cover letter, because that wasn't part of the process. And I talked a lot about that in my opening remarks, and then you have a copy of my resume in the one pocket. And then on the other side of the pocket, you have the top sheet. are some highlights, and I've gone over those, of things that, award-winning initiatives that I was involved in the district. Thank you very much for your support in those. Things that I've been involved in this year, 2014, 2015. Thank you, as I said yesterday, and I will say again, for your support of the Seal of Biliteracy. That's outstanding. And then some ideas that I have for moving on in the future. On the back of that, you have my goal and commitment to the Dearborn community. I want to share that with you, and I talked about some of this, but I will read for our public. If I'm fortunate enough to be selected as the next superintendent in Dearborn, I commit to insist on high expectations for all students, be transparent and open, earn the trust of the students, parents, staff, and community, always communicate, seek and utilize feedback, represent and advocate for the district, both inside and outside the community, be highly visible on school campuses, at athletic, extracurricular and art programs and events and at parent group meetings, and to live in Dearborn, as I said, and be highly visible in the Dearborn community, within community organizations, at community events. You also have my 90-day entry plan that's behind that. That's a two-pager. I tried to keep it short and simple, and it speaks to the idea of having a retreat in the first portion of it. Had the opportunity to meet with some students before my interview with you, and you can also see that one of the other things that I would like to see happen, and this is a draft, by the way, that I would want to go over at the retreat. It's simply a draft at this point, because certainly you should have input in what my goals are. And I'd like to see our students meet with the superintendent and be a committee that helps provide direction for our superintendent, and that is mentioned here as well. And I just want to close by saying that I'm passionate about ensuring that all Dearborn students receive an outstanding education. I'm excited about our future. I would love to work with this board, and I ask you to give me this opportunity.
Well, we appreciate your interest in the position of superintendent of schools. The board is interviewing, as you know, 4 candidates for the position. We expect to conduct our second interviews next week, and we will let you know in a timely manner where you stand in our search process. I can't tell you right at this exact moment when the next step will be, but I can tell you that it will be soon. But obviously not until after Thursday evening, after the second interview.
Thank you very much. I also should mention, and I probably should have melded it in a little bit better, my husband is an employee of the district, and he would be retiring or moving on if I accept this position. I am a very ethical person, and I would not have him continue in the district. Whether that was to be allowed or not, that is not appropriate. So he is on board with that.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Thanks.